Hi, welcome back to my channel and my review for American Werewolf in London. This is a comedy horror film that came out back in 1981, directed by John Landis. Of course, a director who was primarily known for his comedy at the time, stuff like Blues Brothers and Animal House, and then he decided to dip his toes into horror whilst also keeping that comedic edge. And for anybody that saw my horror list that I did on Halloween recently, I talked about my top 25 horror movies of all time, and you will know that this came very high up on this list. I've always absolutely adored this movie. I've seen it a number of times throughout my life, and it was because recently I managed to pick up the Arrow release, this newest restoration they did for the film, and I think it was released a couple of years ago now. I managed to watch that again. I thought I may as well give a full review and all my thoughts on this fantastic movie, because I really do think, especially when talking about 80s horror, this is one of the absolute standouts. So getting into the plot here, this is following these two young American guys who are over here in the UK, hiking through the English moors one night, and they are attacked by a werewolf. One of them is killed and the other one gets scratched. And for anybody that knows the laws and rules of the werewolf world, once you have been scratched, at the next full moon, you will transform into a werewolf. So this character of David, who survives the attack, he wakes up in London a few weeks later, has no understanding of what's happened, what's gone on, what's happened to his friends. He finds out that he has been bitten or scratched by this werewolf and has to find a way to break the curse before it's too late. Now, this is ultimately a horror film at its core, but I really love the comedic elements and the slightly tongue-in-cheek nature that was given to this movie, because I think it makes the whole thing so much more effective and rewatchable. And comedy horror is not a genre that I always particularly enjoy, just because I find sometimes the tone gets a little bit off, the comedy gets in the way of the horror, or it can end up feeling too morbid and you don't have enough funny moments. Whereas here, because you are dealing with a story that is very tragic, it is a sad, depressing story, and it is very dark, and I really do think that the lighter, fun moments that are put in here really help to make it more bittersweet. You know, it's not that sort of laugh out loud humour, massive jokes, or anything like that, but it's just subtle, fun moments that make it fun to go along with the ride and watch. And in some way, it does kind of make the whole thing more twisted when you really think about what this character's going through, and they find humour to get through these really crazy situations. And I think that is really what makes American Werewolf work so well, and it's the thing that makes it so rewatchable for me. And as I say, the fact that this is quite a tragic story and that this character is, of course, ultimately doomed, I do love these kind of final days that he's going through as we follow him in his life, trying to sort everything that he can. He's trying to get over the guilt of having ran away from his friend his friend Jack when they were first attacked by this werewolf. He has to kind of come to terms with that. And I love that he ends up meeting the girl. You know, he meets the nurse back in the hospital in London and has a romance with her. And there's something I love about the vibe of these kind of movies where even though you know you may have a short time left to live, you're kind of making the most of it and enjoying yourself and living your life to the fullest, maybe doing things that you wouldn't have done in your life previously when you were just living normal everyday life. And I think this movie captures that so well. I do love the opening of the movie, of course, when you're seeing all those big wide shots of the moors in England, and it's dark and it's atmospheric, and you just got these two guys slowly making their way up to this pub. And it's funny because I do live in England, I live in London, and I have been a lot of times with friends to these kind of really out the way pubs, off the beaten track, where you just sort of have a few of the locals there, and it always makes me laugh. That first moment when they walk through the door and everybody just stops what they're doing and looks around at them, and it is funny because those kind of places are really like that. They don't like outsiders in there, so when you walk in and you just say, I just want a beer, everyone looks at you very suspiciously. And I think that moment is captured so well. I say, especially for someone who lives in England and has been to these kind of places, it's just a really nice, funny moment. Of course, here the fact that these people are actually also covering a dark secret that lies in the moors outside this pub as well. But it's just a great opening to the movie, and it's interesting because obviously at this point you don't know what they're covering, why the atmosphere of the pub is so weird, what they know. You just get the sense that there's a presence around there, that something is wrong, and that all of the locals know this. And I love the way they're interacting with these two guys, as they're just completely oblivious to what's going on before they're sent out on their way. So I just always love the opening to this movie. When you're talking about this movie, obviously one of the big things that was remembered about it were those incredible effects work done by Rick Baker. Pretty sure he actually did win an Oscar or some type of award for his work on this film, because the work he did was just absolutely amazing. And there's a reason why it's so iconic, especially the werewolf transformation scene. His work on this film is legendary, and it's just the attention to detail, the gory effects, the kind of dedication he put into making some of these scenes possible, where you could show absolutely everything and it would look authentic. I absolutely love it. And the great thing about it is when you have great practical effects work in a movie, it doesn't age the same way that certain movies from, say, the 90s or the 2000s do. Like, I still watch this now, over 40 years on, and the film looks just amazing. It doesn't date it at all. Obviously, there are some bits that are over the top and maybe a bit too much, and it does have an 80s vibe about it, but in terms of just those effects, it still looks amazing even today. And just to go on to talk about that amazing transformation sequence, I remember so distinctly seeing this when I was about 13 or 14 probably, and I knew this scene was coming because of people talking about it that I knew. And even now I do remember how anxious I was in that scene, you know, in the lead up where David is kind of wandering about the house. He's nervous, he's not sure whether he's going crazy or whether this is actually going to happen. He's trying to keep himself busy, and then just like that, Jesus Christ, oh my God, and then it's like he transforms. And I just absolutely love that scene, and I still get that same feeling now when I watch it. And I love the fact they decided to put these kind of humorous moments in there as well, where he's like joking as well. He's saying sorry for insulting his friend as he starts to transform, and I think it does make it more twisted. I definitely think that was intentional to be funny before you have this really horrific scene play out and get to see all of this amazing transformation into the werewolf. And it was interesting to hear that John Landis did say about this scene in particular that he feels like now he showed too much of it, that, you know, he probably should have kept it a little bit more subtle. But to be fair, I do understand, you know, when you have this level of effects work that's gone into it, you kind of want to show it off. But I do get what he's saying to some extent, but it is an absolutely incredible scene to watch even now. But I do think in all the werewolf scenes after that, there is definitely a subtlety there. Like one of the scenes that stands out to me is the London Underground scene, when you're seeing the POV shot of the wolf chasing the business guy up the escalator, and in the distance when you have that wide shot and it slowly shows the wolf coming out. They were very careful with the shots they use, you know, keeping it in the shadows, and it just makes it so much more intriguing. It's like the whole Jaws thing, you know, where actually ending up not showing too much makes it more effective in a lot of ways. So the werewolf scenes now have dated so nicely. It looks amazing, and it just came out as a great effect for this werewolf, with all of the, say, only being able to utilise practical effects work at the time. I do think, though, probably the scariest scene the scenes in the film for me are the dream sequences. You know, when David is first being cursed by this werewolf, and when he's in the hospital and he's getting to know the nurse, and at night he's having all of these really vivid and bizarre nightmares. They are really great sequences, you know, especially when he's first in the hospital bed in the woods and he's chasing deer around to eat them. There's just something kind of surreal about the whole thing, and they really are quite effective. And I liked little details they put in there as well, like you find out early on that David is this Jewish American guy over here in the UK. So one of these nightmares he has is of his relationship with his family growing up in the house, and one night somebody knocks at the door and it's all these kind of wolf humanoids. I don't know how to describe what these monsters are, all in Nazi uniforms, and they all come in and kill everyone there. And it's really kind of weird and interesting little details like that that were put into the movie that makes sense for someone like that to have a nightmare like this. So I think there was just really creative with all of the dream sequences, and definitely the scariest scenes in the movie, I think. I really do enjoy the love story that's put into the movie. As I said earlier, this kind of sense that you might be living out the final days of your life, and as a young guy, you know, kind of going for it with the girl and having this little exciting romance leading into the unknown. I really like something about that, and I think it's captured really nicely here. And obviously, even though David is really acting up, he's acting so strangely, going all these outbursts, he's waking up naked at the zoo, all of this crazy stuff, and she still kind of sticks by him. And I think you do buy into that because of her sort of infatuation with him. She knows there's something wrong with him, but she's intrigued by him. She's really attracted to him. And even though it is a bit crazy in parts, you know, I do buy into the romance of the situation. I think the actress, Jenny Agutter, I think was her name, but she did a really nice job with this performance, and just the chemistry between them is great. And I do think it really adds more to the story having this little romance put into there as well. You also do have this other storyline going on with the doctor who is investigating this whole situation to do with David, because obviously once he arrives in the hospital, there's all these conflicting details about what really went down that night. Was it a crazy man that came out and attacked him? Was it an animal? All these conflicting stories, and because there's enough things that kind of raise his suspicion, he feels compelled to go and investigate this story. And I really like the kind of change of pace following his character as well, where you get to go back up to the moors and revisit all these strange characters back at the pub, and he gets to kind of dig in and find out a little bit of information about what's going on. Obviously, ultimately, it's too late by the time he gets back to help him. But I do really like that as a side plot in the story. And all this stuff that I'm talking about, the different sides of this story, I love the way it all comes together because it is such a tight film. It's one thing I always notice about American Werewolf in London is just every single scene has something interesting going on. It's moving the story along nicely. There's not a single dull moment in this film, and every storyline keeps you engaged, and it really does come together nicely for that huge final sequence, of course taking place in Piccadilly Circus, the werewolf massacre. It's great to see in Piccadilly Circus, obviously a place that's very familiar to me. I live in London, I've been through there a million times. To see all of this carnage going on the streets of London there is quite amazing, especially back in the 80s with this kind of older aesthetic as well. I just love it. And I love how chaotic it is as well. You know there's going to be this werewolf attack, but the way it all happens so suddenly, and there's heads flying and suddenly there's car crashes and just absolute madness going on. But yeah, it's just an incredible sequence. It's a great finale for the movie, leading up to, of course, that very bleak ending, which I do think works so well. It really does capture the sort of essence and the vibe of the whole movie, where you've got this dark, tragic ending where David is still in his wolf transformation. He's been kind of pushed into the alley by the police, and he's about to be taken out, and he has Alex run down to be by him at the risk of being in the line of fire to kind of be with him before he is taken out. And it's such a dark, tragic scene. And then obviously cut straight away to that end credits music, which is kind of that fun, upbeat song. I can't remember who the song's by, but that whole final moments of the film really does tell you exactly everything that you feel going through this movie. The balance of the comedy, the horror, the fun, the tragedy, and I just absolutely love that about it. So when I think about this film now, I just don't know what they could have done to improve it. I really don't have anything negative to say about it. It's one of my all-time favourites. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5 rating. So that is all of my thoughts for you on American Werewolf in London. Please do let me know down in the comments what you think of this movie, and also do let me know what your favourite werewolf film is. It'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on that. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Really do appreciate it. So take care, and I'll see you next time.